According to the latest reports, a Hamas spokesperson says around 50 hostages held in Gaza have been killed by Israeli strikes. Well, there has been a chilling increase in the killings of journalists covering the conflict in Israel and Gaza. The Committee to Protect Journalists is investigating reports of those killed, injured, detained, and reported at least 24 killed, out of them 20 Palestinian, 3 Israeli, and 1 Lebanese journalist. Thembisa Fakude, senior research fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogues, joins us now. Thembisa, good evening to you and welcome. It was just heart-wrenching seeing the story of Wael Dahdouh and how it progressed before he was killed in an Israeli air raid, him seeing his dead wife and children at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, including his son, who, as we saw, wanted to be a journalist just like him. I just want to confirm that we have a little piece that we want to play of the series and the chain of events that led to his passing, and we'll cue that now. If it's not there, we'll just continue with the interview. All right, so it's not there. But this seems to be a series of targeted attacks, Thembisa, on women, on children, and for our purposes in this conversation, what do you think about the attacks then on journalists?
Well, I think Israel has got a green light, of course, from the Americans to do as it pleases in Palestine, both in West Bank and in Gaza, and we've seen them going ahead with that. I mean, Wael is not the first one that was killed. You know that Shireen Abu Akleh was also murdered, and Israel, although it admitted that the bullet came from an Israeli gun or soldier, they refused to be part of any investigation, nor have they issued any words of apology to Shireen's family. It's business as usual for Israel. So as long as you have the United States that continue to support Israel and gives Israel the green light to do as it pleases, you're going to have journalists killed, as has been the case all the time. I mean, the offices of Al Jazeera last year was bombed in full view of the global community. And again, this is a country that has got no respect for international law, and it continues to do as it pleases. And unfortunately, the people that are now targeted, as Wael's family was yesterday, are journalists. And I find it very difficult to believe that it was an accident, what happened to Wael's family yesterday. I think it was a targeted attack, because Wael has been the thorn in the flesh of the Israelis, particularly in terms of his reporting on Al Jazeera Arabic. So they had to somehow intimidate and quiet him.
We're actually playing some of that overlay for our viewers to see, and the journalist that you're seeing there is Wael. You know, what makes this just so stark is, and we're showing picture now to our viewers of him going to the hospital where his family was, his son and daughter killed, his wife as well. Him telling reporters as he leaves that it's not safe, and shares his views there, and then not long afterwards, him dying as well. And it seems that their home was targeted in one of the camps, Nusayrat camp. This is near the center of Gaza, where they were seeking refuge, because they were, like many people in that area, seeking refuge after being displaced by the initial bombardment on their neighborhoods, following the call from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, for people to move south. What do you make, Thembisa? I mean, this story exemplifies, what you were saying, the sense that there is a program, of annihilation, a program of just, of targeting that is deliberate.
Yes, it's deliberate. But I think what scares me is that Israel seeks to polarize journalism and journalists, because what we've seen over the past couple of hours since the death of Wael's family is very selective voices condemning what has been happening and joining in solidarity with both Al Jazeera and Wael's family. And yet there's a sizable number of our colleagues who would have expected that they'll be out there condemning what's happening in Israel, also standing firm against the targeting of journalists, including standing particularly on this particular day in solidarity with all journalists around the world. But what we've seen happening, unfortunately, is there's been a polarization. Only a very few sprinkled across the Middle East journalists that have commented so far in condemnation of what has been happening. So scary times ahead. And I think Israel is changing a lot of processes, not only in terms of politics, but also in terms of how we do business as journalists in the world.
Where does it leave the story? The story, of course, lives are paramount, and part of the work, especially of journalists who work in conflict zones, places where there is high risk. The reason they're there is to tell the story, to get the narrative out, to show the other picture. Our understanding is that the only journalists who really remain to tell the story from the Gaza side are Palestinian journalists in the main. What happens? What is the effect of something like this, where you simply can't get credible coverage from inside a conflict zone such as this?
Well, it gets very complicated because again, you only have as you correctly say, Palestinians or the Gazans who are telling this story, which means therefore that with what happened to Walid yesterday, they are likely to be intimidated moving forward. But on the other side, you have the embeddlement of journalists, particularly the Western journalists who are moving around protected by the Israeli army, again, telling the story from the lenses of the Israeli army. That also is a problem. So balancing this story is becoming really, really difficult. So you're either going to be balancing it from your offices, relying largely on social media and all the postings that the civil society continues to post on social media, or you have to be in Gaza and try and keep an open mind in terms of telling the story. But as it stands, you've got the Gazans and you've got the journalists who are Gazans who are targeted, whose families are also being killed. It becomes very, very difficult for them to be objective, in inverted commas, in telling the story, because they are part now of the story. And first thing that we are taught in journalism, Iman, is you try very hard not to be part of the story. But I think with what's happening at the moment in Gaza, it's very, very difficult for journalists not to be part of this story that's unfolding at the moment.
Yeah, it leaves a bigger responsibility, as you say, for the journalism fraternity to rally around this, to rail against this, and also then for the ordinary member of the public to make sure that the sources that they're relying on are varied and credible in order to build a composite sketch that will serve the objective of what we do, which is balance and accuracy. Thembisa, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this tonight. Thembisa Fakude, Africa-Asia Dialogues Director.